Guess what? There's a new Elvis movie coming out. Can you believe it? And it's by an Australian director. Can you believe that? Baz Luhrmann or Ullman or whatever. The same guy who mangled The Great Gatsby is now covering the story of the King of Rock and Roll. Yeah, but here's the really interesting thing about this movie, which is coming out in a few weeks. The casting of guess who as Colonel Parker, the rather notorious figure behind the fame of Elvis Presley, the string puller, let us say, the handler of Elvis. Guess who plays Colonel Parker in this movie? None other than Tom Hanks. Now, I've spoken before about a couple of things. I've spoken about, and this is something I don't even know how well I've articulated this notion in my head, but it seems to me that for many Hollywood actors, they almost exist, their careers almost exist to embody archetypes. And these archetypes intersect with their real life personas. Maybe not their real life personas, but their real life personas as we are allowed to apprehend them. So these actors might, again, this is just my theory, might be in a way lifetime actors, and they're not just playing a role when they're on screen. They're also playing a role when they're living their lives and living the lives anyway that we read about, in gossip magazines and so forth. So I gave the example of Liam Neeson, who so embodies this, this like sad-eyed assassin archetype. He's got these weepy, sensitive, very vulnerable eyes, which just grab you. And he so often plays the widower, right? Somebody who's lost his wife, who's suffered unimaginable loss. And then in the middle of his actual life, as we know it anyway, his real wife dies. And so, again, we see this embodiment of this archetype, of this, this man with a special set of skills, who can just really track down the bad guys and just go nuts, just take them down one by one with his bare hands. But beneath it all, he's this sensitive, quivering, sad, mournful person. And I think if you take a look at other actors and actresses, you'll see sort of certain things like that cropping up, where again they're not just playing a role in their real life, or not just playing a role on screen. They seem to be playing a role in real life as well, that intersects with their screen persona. Now, with Tom Hanks, it's very, very complicated. I spoke about him before, and we all know the accusations. I'm not going to go into them here, but if you're in the know, then you know. It's very interesting to me that Hanks plays this kind of panoply of characters, and a lot of them are just, sometimes he's the everyman, right? Sometimes, like in the Saving Private Ryan character, or I can't think of others right now off the top of my head, but he often just turns up as this kind of this hero who never intended to be a hero, but who's just in the right place at the right time and has to do the right thing, who's caught off guard and then rises to the challenge, and he's kind of this, aw shucks Jimmy Stewart type of person in these cases. That's not how he started out, though. His initial roles were comedic roles. He was never a comedian, but he was a comic actor in movies like Splash, and on a show like Bosom Buddies, which of course, it was a farcical show, and it's kind of funny to see it this way, but at the same time, it did in many ways forecast the rise of transgenderism, although at the time it was just sort of this wacky premise, this ridiculous premise that these two guys couldn't find housing anywhere, and they had to dress up as women, they had to pretend to be women in order to live at this boarding house for women. But my point is, early on he was like this. He was any kind of archetypal character. He was like a wise ass in movies like Dragnet and Splash and show like Bosom Buddies, and that was the early part of his career. But then he morphed into like this great guy, like the hero, like this aw shucks hero, but somebody who's there just doing his job, just doing his duty, and he always seems to turn up in all these important places, like during a moon launch in Apollo 13, or like in Forrest Gump, where he's for every major historical event he's there, somehow in his own strange way affecting the course of history. And then we also have there's the romantic leading man, which is he's kind of connected to the wiseacre type, kind of halfway between the wiseacre and the hero that we see him play in other films, in Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail and other movies like that from the 80s and the 90s. These romantic comedies. He's like a relatable, funny, but also vulnerable, and also just a nice guy, deep down underneath it all. Beneath his sometimes caustic jokes. Never do we see Hanks as the bad guy. Never. I don't think there's, unless I'm forgetting something, and y'all can correct me if I am, I don't think there's one movie where he plays a bad guy. Except the one where he comes closest is in a movie called That Thing You Do. This is a movie that was it like the mid to late 90s, and it was about this band that suddenly explodes. They become this one-hit wonder, and he's the one who takes them on as manager. And in that kind of role, he does kind of have a sinister side. He's a controller. He's a handler. He's somebody who decides how they dress, what they say, how they present themselves. And so, is that sort of a peak? Because they have to tell the truth, right? They have to, in some ways, they have to expose the truth for us, so that they can never say we didn't tell you so. So that so that we are culpable ultimately if we buy into their lies, because they can always say, look, if you were watching carefully, we told you the truth. All you had to do was pay attention, You chose not to pay attention. So now he's playing Colonel Parker, which I just think is and I know this was a movie that was being filmed before all the nonsense started, and supposedly Hanks was the first guy to ever get that crazy virus, just down in Australia filming this movie, and then he's like, again, talking about the actor still playing his role in quote unquote real life. He's being himself, being his own likable persona, telling us kind of helping to advance this op in his own way. That's the movie they were filming when everything went stupid back in early 2020, and so now it's finally coming out, and now we're seeing another vision of Tom Hanks as this man of control, this handler, this guy who's got, we think that Elvis is the one, before our eyes, he's the real star, but this is the man behind the star, who's really can make or break him, and who's probably culpable in a lot of ways concerning what happened ultimately to Elvis, with his unfortunate career arc, and his breakdown, and his drug addictions, and ultimately his death. So keep your eyes on that, is all I'm saying. Keep your eyes on that one if you're somebody who's watching for this kind of thing, for the meaning behind the screen, behind the message, beyond the message, the meta message. This is something to pay attention to, and I'm quite interested in it myself. What it has to say about the current state of things, where we're at right now. Before I go, I'd like to also tell you that I have just recorded a video that I put on my BitChute channel because it has a title that would probably get me instantly banned from YouTube. So I will leave the link to that one below in the description, and please visit my BitChute channel and watch that video as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all soon.